What is up, guys? Welcome back to the pod. We are back here for the second time this week to do our normal week in review show. We, of course, will start things off here in a few moments with the latest updates on the Sasha Banks and Naomi situation from walking out on WWE this past Monday on Raw. We have a few other things outside of the ring WWE related, and then we will get into AEW Dynamite from this past week, and then the card for their start of their AEW Dynamite Double or Nothing go home week next week, with of course Double or Nothing being a week from today, next Sunday, May 29th, which is Memorial Day weekend for us here in the United States. If you guys are lucky like I am, I will be off the following Monday to kind of give ourselves a nice little day to recoup and all that good stuff. So we will get right into the show here today. And full disclosure, guys, I may or may not be as in-depth as I normally am on certain topics and maybe on this past Dynamite show, because full disclosure, I am annoyed with myself. I don't know what happened, but I literally just recorded over an hour's worth of this week's show, and when I uploaded it to the computer and hit play to, of course, make sure everything was good to go before I published the final product, there was no audio at all for the first 45 minutes. There's a random part where it cuts in at the final 15, which, yeah, is shit. It serves me absolutely no fucking purpose. And to be honest with you guys, I'm so irritated with myself, and I don't even know what I could have done differently, because I literally did the same process as I've done dozens of times now with you guys. But yeah, so just full transparency there. So like I said, if I'm not as in depth with some things, it's because I literally just went over it and I'm a little pressed for time here now at this point. And yeah, but with that, all that being addressed, and without further ado, we will get in right to today's show. Starting off with the main topic on everyone's mind, of course, is the Sasha Banks Naomi WWE drama, for lack of better words. The whole thing is just a clusterfuck, guys. I'll be very interested to see the first interview that, especially Sasha Banks, because she loves doing interviews, more so than we've gotten the chance to see from Naomi in the past. But just to hear exactly from their mouth at that point, whenever it will be, hopefully in the near future, just to hear their side of things, how it actually played. Well, I'm not going to say actually, because like I've always said, there's two sides to a story, but from everything that I've heard, I kind of lean more towards the side of Sasha and Naomi now. And like I said, I didn't say on this podcast, I said on the one that you guys will never hear, and sadly me either, that I just recorded, but I did drop a show earlier this week that was dedicated just to what was at that point breaking news of Sasha and Naomi. I believe I dropped it on Wednesday to kind of get a little bit of a further idea of the full story, more news outlets and things like that, before I just went in there and just said, hey guys, Sasha and Naomi walked out, have a good night, but my full thoughts are there on Wednesday's show. But we did get a little bit more insights, supposedly, that another factor leading into why Sasha was upset with the whole layout of what apparently was presented to them this past Monday was, part of it was she was going to be obviously losing to Ronda at Hell in a Cell, I believe was what the original idea. The idea going into it, if you aren't aware, was, of course, it was going to be the six-pack challenge on Monday, and for whatever reason, Sasha and Naomi, your women tag team title holders at that point, were going to be implemented in the match as well, or involved in the match as well, I should say. And apparently the idea was to have Naomi pin Sasha Banks, and then Sasha would later on obtain a victory somehow, or gain her opportunity, of course, somehow to face off against Ronda, either being at what I assume would have been Hell in a Cell. So you would have had Hell in a Cell, the Hell in a Cell Women's SmackDown title match would have been Sasha Banks versus Ronda Rousey, and then Naomi versus Bianca Belair, I believe, for Monday Night Raw, which, if they weren't the women's tag team champions, then okay, like that would have been cool for Naomi. And either way, I would have loved to have seen more of a story, and I think that's the bottom line here. The lack of story that would have been implemented in it, the fact that it really makes no reason why your tag team champions are going to be in that situation when you have not a stacked roster, but many other options for them, especially since it's not even the main focal point going into Hell in a Cell. The focus point at this point is Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes going to Hell in a Cell. So all of the other matches, and I'm sure, well, can't even say I'm sure at this point, but we may get some type of tag team title rematch with the Usos and RK Bro at Hell in a Cell, and we'll see if Roman ends up doing anything, which it doesn't appear that he will, since he was removed from the poster and it's now just showing Cody and all that. But it's just, there's just so many other options that they could have gone with, obviously, without it being Sasha and Naomi taking the loss there, still being your tag team champions, and then after that, going into Money in the Bank, focusing on the tag team titles. It's just, why even have them at this point, you know? And as they announced on SmackDown, which I'll get into now, Michael Cole, right before the main event, ironically enough, timing-wise, that features Naomi's husband, and I say that, and I'm not blaming Michael Cole at all. He's just a mouthpiece. He's just doing what he's told to do. So, again, yeah, it's, you know, people, like I said on my show earlier this week, they gave a lot of shit to Corey Graves for calling Sasha and Naomi unprofessional and all that shit, but that's not Corey necessarily himself saying that. That's Corey relaying a message, and I think everyone should know that by now. And the fact that a lot of fans had some type of negative connotation towards Corey in that regard for it is just kind of perplexing to me. It's like, come on, guys, like we all know what this is at this point, unless you're a newer fan. Then if you are, then hey, kudos to you, and I wish I was less in the know as you know what I mean, because those are the days, right? But I think the main focus here, and well, before I get to that, I will say that we did have a Sasha sighting earlier this week. At some point she was at a concert. There was like a 10-15 second clip of her either backstage or just somewhere at the arena enjoying a show, and she had like a drink or something and was just flexing her muscles, like just enjoying her time. And it's good to see she's out there living her life and not drowning in sorrows at home, you know what I mean? So whether or not look, I say that, and I'm not going to judge her mental state one way or another, because no other reason. It's not my place. But just to see her out and about and having what appeared to be a good time was cool to see. So shout out to her, and I hope she continues to live it up while all this bullshit kind of plays out in front of us. But yeah, until we get an actual further statement from Sasha and Naomi or any more insight on anything, we're all just kind of sitting here speculating at this point. But we did hear also that apparently both women do not have much longer on their respective contracts, a few months apparently for both of them. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer they do in fact have, and of course if they end up re-signing, which I would be very surprised if they both do. But hey, if both sides could come to a resolution to this and use this as an angle going forward, I think that would be badass, and I think that they would have a lot of room to grow with this, and I think it would be just a fun story, and you could do so many different things with this. You could tie Naomi with this back into the bloodline and just really take her more seriously and completely do a 180 with her character. Sasha Banks, I mean, like, there's just, it's just countless things, right? So, and look, I don't really see that happening, just maybe wishful thinking and just kind of exploring all avenues, but if nothing else, I wish both of the ladies nothing but the best, and I hope that everything that happens at this point is what they want and that they're happy with, and that they're just happy, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's what life is about. It's easy to get caught up in who these people are as characters and what we expect from them and as fans, and oh, you signed a contract, you know, you're entitled to do this, and this, and that is absolutely fact, you know, like that. You sign a contract, that means you agree to do this, you know, but I do believe also you get to a certain point where enough is enough, and if mentally you're just fed up and you can't do this anymore, or you're just done with being, if you feel like you're being undervalued and underappreciated and you just had enough of that, then you do mentally get to a place where it's not worth it. So look, and like I said, at this point, until we get a solid answer as to the who, what, where, when, and why of everything from Sasha and Naomi, we're just kind of spitballing, at this point. But I will just wrap it up here and say that on SmackDown, they, like I said, with the Michael Cole segment, they did officially suspend Sasha and Naomi indefinitely from WWE and strip them of the tag team championships. And they did inform us that they will be having a tournament for the tag titles, which I think is fucking pointless at this point. This thing is like cursed, how the Universal title felt for the first however many years of its life. So in my opinion, just be done with the shits. Just put them in the back until you actually have a women's division that has more depth to it and more females that you take seriously. And I say that with no disrespect towards them. It's just the lack of story for any of them, really. So until you have all the stars aligned, I just really think that just be done with them for now and focus on the women that you do have. Focus on establishing the women's championships for each brand more and amplifying them more and just putting more focus into that. But what do we know, guys? We're just on the outside looking in. But we will continue to monitor, of course, how this plays out. And it'll be interesting to see if they do show up or how long they're out for. And just where we're at this point from six months from now. It'll probably be a completely different world in the wrestling world. And it's just fascinating I mentioned in my other show on the Hidden Files at this point, I will call them. It's kind of cool to see how quickly things change in the wrestling world and how quickly you go from topic to topic week after week. Like MJF was the main focus point I went last week or the week before, and now it's Sasha and Naomi walking out and what that means for WWE and WWE statement and just all that good stuff. But moving on here, and speaking of WWE, Stephanie McMahon herself has made a little bit of headlines this week recently. She released a statement on Twitter stating, quote, "As of tomorrow, I am taking a leave of absence from the majority of my responsibilities at WWE. WWE is a lifelong legacy for me, and I look forward to returning to the company that I love after taking this time to focus on my family," end quote. And that was 4:30 p.m. on May 19th this past week. And for this one, that's really all the information we have, so there's no, again, point speculating, but for me, this one is kind of obvious. This lady has gone through so much in the past year alone with her personal and immediate family, with I'm sure her daughters growing up, and I believe one of them, I don't think they're that far apart in age. I think maybe 2 or 3 years apart, each one of them. They, of course, Stephanie and Triple H, being they, have 3 daughters, and I think one of them, like, the oldest is, 15 or 16, so that's, a pretty, primitive year, you know what I mean? That's a pretty major year in a child's life, and you want to be, if nothing else, you want to be home and more available for them, especially being their mom. You want to be more accessible. You want to just be there for all those little moments, and especially going into the summertime frame, they probably want to take a vacation, like an actual family vacation, and maybe be able to travel without having to work, or maybe just stay home. They, I'm sure, travel 95% of their life, and maybe staying home to them is more appealing than traveling at this point. But whatever their vacation is and her time off is, I hope it's positive, and I hope it's nothing with a negative connotation in the back end, or something that we'll find out later on, like it was because of a health issue with Triple H or anything like that. Of course, we all know Triple H went through a pretty severe health scare over the summer in these past 8, 9, 10 months, I should say, something like that. So, yeah, we of course have seen him with Stephen A. Smith, and he's addressed it and been out and about, and we saw him at WrestleMania, so he seems to be doing much better, thankfully. And it could just be, it was just what I said, a big scare and a wake-up call for them, and she realized that she wants to spend more time at home, and if that's all it is, then I'm happy, and I hope Triple H is able to stay home as well. We don't really know exactly what his schedule is looking like nowadays, but we do sadly know that he's no longer, of course, taking care of NXT, and that's no longer his baby, quote-unquote. But yeah, so it is interesting, though, and rather shocking, someone of, Stephanie, being Vince's daughter, to actually taking time off, and kudos to her, again, for not feeling ashamed or feeling pressure to continue and just to work through it. we hear the quotes from Vince, right? That Vince is supposedly saying that we've heard from the Mr. McMahon character, but I'm sure ring true that sleep is for the enemy and you sleep when you're dead and all that stuff. So, and he himself, we hear sleeps what, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours a night, you know? I'm sure maybe that's exaggerating at some points, but maybe some points not. So just the fact that she was able to feel comfortable enough with herself. I mean, obviously financially she's fine. But just personally and with her family and just realizing that, hey, she does need to take some time away for whatever reason and just focus on her immediate family more, I think is really cool and shout out to her. And like I said, I hope it's just everything is positive and nothing but the best for her and Triple H and their family, and I hope she takes time, as much time as she needs. You know, I hope this isn't something that she feels like she needs to rush back to. And again, look, we don't necessarily know her day-to-day functions, but if she can step away for 3-6 months, then I think she could, or I think she should rather. And so just shout out to her, and I hope everything goes well for her, Triple H, and all of her family. The next bit of surprising news that I didn't think I would be actually addressing and talking about on the pod is Ric Flair's returning to wrestling. He has apparently been training extensively for a few months now. Apparently this wasn't a surprise last minute thing. He did an interview recently with TMZ and told them that he had recently met with about 40 or so doctors and essentially took the advice and went ahead and felt most comfortable with one of the doctors, which I'm sure is the one, or maybe not the one, but one of the ones who obviously approved him for in-ring contact. And the reason that, because TMZ obviously asked him why he felt the need to come back, and he said that he wasn't happy with the way that his 2011 year went and ended. And look, to be frank with you guys, like, no disrespect to TNA and the work he did with Sting and TNA there and everything like that, but when I think of Ric Flair's last match, I think of the match that he had with Shawn Michaels. You know, I don't, at WrestleMania 24, I don't think of really anything else in the career, at least, of Ric Flair outside of that match with Shawn Michaels. So and of course I know it happened, obviously, you know, but to me, I don't know, it's a weird thing, like, to me, like, it happened, but it didn't really happen, if that makes sense. Just like Shawn Michaels' return in Saudi Arabia didn't really happen. He still retired and never came back, in my mind. Call it what you want, but yeah, that's just how I think of it. So, the fact that he stated that he needs to come back because he doesn't like the way it ended, you know, I get that, but at this point, and he said it wasn't because of the money. And I say that because a lot of people are I don't know if they're joking or what have you, but they're referencing that he just recently had his most latest divorce. I'm not sure what number it is, maybe 4 or 5. But they're saying, oh, he probably owes alimony and all this shit. And you know, like, to be honest with you guys, I don't really give a shit about his finances. It's none of my business. I just don't care. To me, I think he's probably coming back for the love of pro wrestling that he has, and of course the money. I think it's probably like a 1A or 1B. I don't think I've heard somewhere that Ric Flair said at one point that he sees himself dying either in the ring or on top of a woman. So there's that. But I believe that. I believe in his mind that he believes that to be true. I just hope that's not at this show that's happening, July 31st, I believe, in Nashville, Tennessee. That is at the StarCast event that's happening that weekend, right before the pay-per-view for WWE. So, look, me personally, I'm not here for it. I don't think it should be happening. I wouldn't go to the show myself, but I'm not going to sit here and talk shit about it. If that's what he wants to do, and he had a doctor clear him, whatever, you know, it's no skin off my back, as they say, you know, like, I'm not gonna go out and watch the clip, but I'm not gonna shit on it either. If that's what he wants to do, then more power to you, you know what I mean? I will say, I'm kind of happy that if he is gonna be doing this, it is being, the team involved with it is Conrad Thompson's team, which of course is his son-in-law. Conrad Thompson is married to one of Ric Flair's daughters, Megan, so at least it's not just some Joe Blow Dimebag, like, just random promoter out there, right? Just some scumbag dude looking to take advantage and just looking to make a quick payday, and who doesn't have Ric Flair's best interests at heart. Because of course Conrad is, right? You know, obviously that's family at this point. And so I will say that, and I will say that that does make me feel slightly a little bit better. And the idea going into it was that it was going to be a 6-man tag and not just a one-on-one. We will see what the actual match announced ends up being. But yeah, like, I'm not really sitting here eager for this match to happen, but I'm not going to talk shit about it either. You know, it's just kind of one of those things where it is what it is. If you're down for that, then hey, enjoy. And if not, then just keep on with your life. Moving on to the AEW side of the wrestling world, we will get into this past week Dynamite in the episode that we had. Like I said, I'm not going to get too much into it, just for time purposes here. I'm just, again, so irritated. It's so bizarre. Like, the episode plays, but there's just no audio at all. I've never seen it. So, if any of you listeners out there are wizards with the audio world and have more experience, I would be tickled just to know exactly what happened. So if you have any ideas, feel free to shout them out to me on Twitter at ASHMANNS, or on the show's Twitter page at kickasspodcast_. But moving on to more important things here, which is the AEW Dynamite from this past weekend, or this past Wednesday. Like I said, we started off, the main focus point going into this week was the couple of jokers that we had. There's a lot of speculation as to who the jokers were going to end up being. And the match that started off Dynamite was the men's side of things. We had the Owen Hart Foundation men's tournament quarterfinal match with Samoa Joe facing off against the first joker. And that joker ended up being Johnny Elite. I will admit, one of those people who was no blame on AEW, right? Like, this was just me. Like, I went through about 3 different emotions within about 45 seconds for Johnny's debut, right? So when I saw Johnny Elite, my brain immediately went to Johnny Gargano, and I was like, fuck yeah, here we go, this is gonna be awesome. So super excited. And then Johnny Morrison, Johnny Elite, actually walked out on stage, and we realized who it was, and I was like, oh, okay. So I went kind of down a little bit, and then within like a few seconds of that, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a solid match, and this is pretty cool. So went back up a little bit. So it was just a weird array of emotions in a short time frame. But the match itself ended up being pretty good. The one spot that, of course, everyone is talking about towards the end was the 450 that Johnny Elite was a little off on. He just came up a little bit short, but the way he was able to save it, he kind of landed on his knees and just kind of leaned forward a little bit more in a pretty quick and swift way. So shout out to him for that quick thinking and quick recovery. And it wasn't, that bad, but I'm glad that, of course, wasn't the finisher, if anything. The victory did end up going to Samoa Joe here, as it should have. And there was no Johnny Elite is all elite graphic released from AEW or Tony Khan, from that matter, so this may have just been a one-off appearance for Johnny Elite or something just periodically that we may get, but it was a good showing nonetheless. After that, we got Hangman Adam Page versus Konosuke Takashita. Last week I said Takashita, because that's one pronunciation I heard of it, but apparently that's wrong. And I'm so sorry, but I need to hear the pronunciation the correct way again to be able to properly say it. So I know his first name is Konosuke, so I will probably just stick with that. But if you are only able to see one full match from this Dynamite, I would absolutely check this out. This was so snug and just so good. As weird as that may sound, it was just a solid fucking match, and just something that you enjoy, or something that you didn't really necessarily, or in my side, I guess I should speak for. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. I thought maybe it was going to be like a quick few minute match, and it wasn't anything too long or too crazy, but it was just solid. And having CM Punk on commentary gave it that little bit of something extra, I feel like. And the ending of the match was just so well done, with Hangman, of course, hitting the buckshot lariat, and I know a lot of people didn't really like how Konosuke sold the lariat. He of course, made contact, and instead of staying down, he went down but was kind of wobbly and was kind of not really on his feet but trying to get to his feet, and then that allowed Hangman to pick him up and hit him with the GTS after kind of looking at Punk and giving him a little side eye and kind of like a "here's to you, pal" type thing, and getting the 1-2-3 after hitting the GTS. That I'm not gonna say I had a problem with that. I kind of like it, and it kind of makes sense. Sometimes when you get smacked over the head or hit over the head, or you're woozy, you're not necessarily knocked out. You're wobbling, and that was kind of the interpretation that I got from it. So let me know if you guys think anything differently. But that was just kind of the way that I kind of took his reaction and his selling of the lariat, buckshot lariat. But that was kind of a setup for the limited face-to-face that we got from Hangman and Punk. And I will say, again, shout out to Punk for the shirt choice of this week for I believe I'm pretty sure it was let me start over. I'm not sure of the exact wording, but I think it was something similar to abortion rights or human rights, was on his shirt, a custom-made shirt. So, look, I know this podcast isn't about politics or anything like that, but for me personally, I appreciated that, and it meant a lot to me. And if nonetheless, just AEW allowing their wrestlers to stand up for what they believe in, regardless of how you personally feel about it, is cool to see. So shout out to Punk and AEW and everyone involved for just allowing something that may seem kind of small, but in the grand scheme, I think to me was kind of a big deal. But moving on after that, we had the tag team match of Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland versus the Workhorsemen, that of course being JD Drake and Anthony Henry. This match was pretty quick and to the point. It was just to spotlight Lee and Strickland and to set up them bragging that win put them in the top 5. That, of course, led to Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs making an interruption because no one in AEW can have a promo segment without being interrupted. They came out and started talking shit. Ricky got called a giant-sized soap bar or something to that effect by Swerve, which was pretty clever. We did end up getting a interference again from Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus. Christian Cage did all the talking for his group there and set up a triple threat match for next week with Jungle Boy being involved, and then the triple threat match for Double or Nothing pay-per-view itself, which we will get into in a second here as well. And I don't know if anyone else really picked up on it. I haven't really heard it referenced too much, but when Christian was kind of going through the lineup there and making the matches, Jungle Boy kind of gave him like a side-eye look at one point, and it was just kind of like, okay, okay, good to know type reaction. So the seeds are kind of being planted early here, and I'm very, very excited to see Christian finally turn on Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus and just let them hopefully spotlight Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus for that matter in the singles light a little bit more. I don't even want them to necessarily break up, but just have Jungle Boy involved in maybe like the TNT title picture a little bit more, or even Luchasaurus for that matter. I think he deserves rather to have a standout run for himself in the solo world. So hopefully we get to that at some point. But after that, we have what was my favorite part of this week's show, which was Wardlow taking his 10 lashes, which sounds crazy to say out loud and maybe a little sadistic. But I just loved everything about this segment. I loved the way that Wardlow essentially just stood there in the middle of the ring, still handcuffed, and no-sold the first 8 lashes, I believe it was. And then once we got to the 9th and 10th, or before we could even get to the 10th, the 8th one he actually started reacting to and started selling a bit, and then MJF did the shitty thing that you can do as a heel and kicked Wardlow in the nuts from behind, and then started just wailing on him with the belt after that, and I think he ended up getting like 15 or so lashes on him in total. Wardlow is just a fucking beast, man, and this made me love him even more and just buy into him even more as a character and just have him want to kick MJF's ass even more. And it's crazy because I try not to be, but I am one of those fans that just respects the hell out of MJF. But after seeing this, like, I even myself was like, dude, you went too far. Like, you're actually like a piece of shit. Like, stop. So they're definitely being effective, and I'm I'm ready to see the culmination. I think that the match that they're going to have next week with him versus Spears in the cage is going to be stellar. But I'm definitely looking forward and ready for the match that will most likely be getting a Double or Nothing between MJF and Wardlow themselves. The next match we had up was the Owen Hart Foundation Men's Tournament quarterfinal match between Rey Fenix and Kyle O'Reilly. This was another good match, but to me, the last 5 minutes of this match was just fucking phenomenal and makes me want to go back and rewatch the match in and of itself. Just solid wrestling, and it was cool to see how these two guys reacted to each other, because if you think about it, they really do have conflicting styles. Kyle is more of the mat-based technical wrestler, right? And then you have Rey Fenix, who is the obvious high flyer. So to see them kind of clash and encounter each other, but still have a solid and fun match was just beautiful. So if you actually have a little bit more time, I know I mentioned Hangman Page and Konosuke earlier, but try to check out this match too. This was just beautifully told and so well done. But we did end up with Kyle O'Reilly getting the victory here, which was kind of obvious going into it, although I wouldn't have been too surprised if Rey got the surprise victory. But with the story that they're going with the tournament itself and the Undisputed Elite and all that, it was pretty important that Kyle got the victory here to kind of keep that story alive. After that, we got the Chris Jericho and William Regal face-to-face segment, although they were face-to-face at a distance. We're, I guess, still doing social distancing in some regards. Chris Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society were on stage. Regal, the Blackpool Combat Club, were in the ring along with Eddie, Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz. Jericho did about 85% of the talking here, and it was pretty good starting off with. He got a little personal, which I was surprised they went to so quickly. He got personal with Mox, mentioning his AA, and the fact that Regal has had addiction issues in the past, and that he was surprised that Regal was even still around at this point. So it definitely got a little personal at a few times, and I was surprised they went there so soon. Maybe so soon with Moxley at least, but Regal's reaction or response rather was kind of not what I was expecting. Jericho at one point mentioned, or in reference back in 2001, where in WWF there was this spot where Jericho supposedly pissed in William Regal's tea, which I was so hoping they were going to reference. So I'm so happy they did. The entire time I was like, look, if they don't mention this tea segment, then I don't know what we're doing here, and they did. So thank you for that, Jericho. But Regal counteracted that by saying that every week that they've been on the road together, which has been many years if you think about it. Since then, Regal has stuck Jericho's toothbrush up Regal's bottom. Yeah, so it's, I feel weird even saying it, in multiple times, like every week. So it's like, dude, like, if that's what you like, then I'm the last person to judge anyone, you know what I mean? But, it just was not expecting that. It was not expecting that at all. It was just kind of like, how do you react to that? Like, do you cheer that? Do you boo that? Like, I don't know. So it just got kind of weird, but at one point towards the end, Moxley got tongue tied there. I'm just kind of like still perplexed that even like made air. And like, I would just love to see like the reaction backstage, and I just like the planning into it. Like, I don't know. But anyway, Moxley towards the end of the whole segment here mentioned that he did not want to do that stupid sports entertainment shit in reference to the Stadium Stampede match being almost proposed by Jericho and his Appreciation Society. But Moxley said, like, he isn't, like I just said, he's not doing that stupid shit, and he suggested like an Anarchy in the Arena type match, which we haven't got an official match of, or an official match made yet, but it would be cool if we get like a new version of a match, and if that is going to be the exact titling of it, what that ends up looking like, and things of that nature. So it'd be cool to see what that ends up being. And I was partly thinking that maybe they were going to go the blood and guts route, but if we end up getting a different style of match, that would be pretty cool too. But after that segment, we ended up getting the Owen Hart Foundation Women's Tournament quarterfinal match. It was Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, versus the Joker for the women's division, and that ended up being Maki Ito. And I will probably be in the minority here, and I mean no disrespect, but I was just fucking let down with this one. It made me let down is too harsh. I'm just not a fan of Maki. I don't get the act. I think it's kind of annoying, and for me it kind of makes my head hurt, and I don't mean that as bad as it sounds. I'm just, I guess, sensitive, which I am. Like, I have a weird thing with like certain smells and like certain sounds like give me like an immediate headache. It's just, I've had whatever. Anyway, but moving on, once that she was revealed, and I guess I was kind of more set on it being like Ember Moon or someone like that as well. I just wasn't expecting this, and they did get me there, but it just kind of really took me out of the match. But they did go with the what should have been for sure an apparent victory here, with that going to Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. So she, of course, advances in the tournament to face Toni Storm next week. But yeah, I was just not into this match at all, guys. So I'm sorry if you were, and hey, if you are, kudos to you, and that's fine. We all have our own taste, right? But just wasn't for me. What was for me, and what I hoped would be more, was the main event being Adam Cole versus Jeff Hardy in the Owen Hart Foundation Men's Tournament match here, the semifinal match, I should say. And I don't know why they only got 5-6 minutes, not even that. It's perplexing to me, and I don't really know. I think that really kind of took me out of it too. Like, once I realized that we weren't really going to get a full match, and maybe that was the idea. Maybe they're looking to save this to run it back in the future, which I could get, but I don't know. Like, I expected this to get at least 10-15 minutes, and the fact that it got less than 10, and that's being generous, just kind of took me out of it. But it did accomplish what it needed to do here, and I just love seeing Jeff in general, so we did still get that at least. But Adam Cole did pick up the victory here to advance in the tournament himself as well. But moving on to the prediction, or not the prediction, but the preview for next week's card, rather, that is being billed as the 3rd year anniversary show for AEW. AEW's flagship pay-per-view was Double or Nothing back in 2019. Of course, Dynamite debuted in October later that year of 2019, but AEW as a company as a whole debuted in May of 2019 at Double or Nothing that year, so that is the 3rd year anniversary this week coming up, which is pretty cool that we're already at the 3rd year mark, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's crazy to think that it's already been 3 years, and just to see how much they've grown and how much the world has changed since then. We've gone through a freaking pandemic since the inception of AEW. It's insane. But the lineup that we have for next week's show, we are getting a face-to-face with Hangman Page and CM Punk, so that should be interesting to see how deep they get there. We get our semifinal matches in the Owen Hart tournament. The ladies' side is Toni Storm versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, which, in my opinion, could have been the finals match, to be honest with you guys, too. So the fact that this is just a semifinals, I think, says a lot. And this one could really go either way. I could see Jamie Hayter getting involved to cost Toni Storm the victory and allow Britt to advance. But I think if you really want to make a statement here, you have Toni win clean against Britt Baker and Toni advance. I, at this point, think you should have Toni win the tournament, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I could really see this going either way, for really. After that, we have the men's side of things with Samoa Joe versus Kyle O'Reilly, which is going to be fucking phenomenal, so that just kind of speaks for itself. We have the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, FTR, facing off against Roppongi Vice, which is kind of a random match. We did get like a video segment or two setting up this match, but unless I missed something somewhere, it's just kind of random. But it should be good nonetheless. We will be getting also, like I mentioned earlier, the steel cage match with MJF as your special guest referee. The participants being Shawn Spears, the chairman, versus Wardlow. And I believe Wardlow has to win this match in particular to even get his championship, his actual match against MJF at Double or Nothing on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this out. I think it's pretty obvious Wardlow has to get his victory here to advance to Double or Nothing, but with MJF being the referee, it'll be cool to see how they put a spin on things and how they allow Wardlow to advance. We also have the final match on the card listed being Jungle Boy versus Swerve Strickland versus Ricky Starks for the FTW Championship. This match, I think it's just gonna be fucking great, and I'm here for this match itself. I love Ricky Starks. I hope he retains his title. If not, I hope he loses this in order to set him up to win the tag titles on Sunday. But that is the preview for next week's AEW. And guys, I do appreciate you for downloading and keeping this show in your feed and just promoting the show and just listening to it each week. It's like I mentioned either last week or the week before. It's really cool to see how far the show has grown in such a short amount of time and just to see how many different countries we're reaching. And I'm sure English isn't even the first language for a lot of you guys out there who are listening to this. So the fact that you are listening and whatever method you're going through to listen to it, I appreciate you doing so. And if you have any feedback or anything at all, you, like I said, can always hit me up on Twitter at ASHMANNS or the show's Twitter page at kickashpodcast_. But that is all for this week's show, guys. I will be talking to you guys in a few days. Take care and have an awesome week.